Welcome to Sense of Style. I'm Stuart. 8 fragrances for men who don't follow trends. And if you're not aware, the current trends tend to be an awful lot of vanilla, very, very sweet fragrances. And I think we've crossed the line into gourmand territory as well. That's a territory that used to be exclusively female, but men are more and more wearing gourmand fragrances. The house that exemplifies that move to sweet gourmandy fragrances is Lattafa. They have taken something like Angel Share, and they've given us a clone, Lattafa Camra, but really, this is a much, much sweeter version of Angel Share. They did the exact same thing with Dior Sauvage Elixir. They gave us Lattafa's Assad, which is kind of similar, but has an awful lot more sweetness. That's the way they're going right now, so there'll be nothing like that on this list today. Today, I'm talking about fragrances that come from houses that do their own thing, that don't follow trends, or fragrances themselves that are innovative and don't follow trends. No gourmands today. Fragrance number 1, this is Terre Eau de Parfum Intense. And if you know anything about the house of Hermes, you will know that they're very minimalist, very stubborn, and the last thing in the world they're going to do is give you what's trendy. They're the anti-trendy house. However, what's interesting about this fragrance is if you consider coffee to be gourmandy, then this might just fit into, you do drink coffee, you're consuming it, right? That's usually what a gourmand is. And there's a licorice note that, while I don't pick up any licorice, some people do. I get a tiny bit of sweetness with the coffee. So what I get is like a mildly sweet roasted coffee. If that's a gourmand to you, then maybe Terre d'Hermes are breaking new ground. But really, it's nothing like all the sweet vanillic and fruity fragrances you're getting elsewhere. If they'd wanted this to be a true gourmand, the bergamot off the top would be a juicy bergamot, but it's the exact opposite of that. Christine Nagel wanted to make sure that the terre means earth, that the earthiness of this fragrance fit in with the Terre d'Hermes line. And that stone note in the base has a mineralic quality that if you make that bergamot juicy, it would override the minerality of the rock. I'm not kidding. She went that far to do it. Now, she did this because the original Terre d'Hermes has a flint note. Now, it plays a much larger role in Terre d'Hermes than the stone note does here, but there is a slight mineral feel to this, just to keep it in line with all the earthiness of the other Terre d'Hermes fragrances. But the bergamot comes across as definitely fresher, and that's one of the reasons they paired it with black pepper. So it's a fresh, not a juicy bergamot. And yeah, the coffee and the licorice you're going to get in the heart create a mildly sweet coffee fragrance. It's heavy coffee at first, and it gets, oddly enough, it gets fresher as the fragrance goes on. At least that's my experience of it. It's a high-quality fragrance. And I got to admit, when I first tried it, I was annoyed because I'm like, it's just a coffee fragrance, but I've been wearing it more and more. There's no way the original Terre d'Hermes, when it first came out, was like a big hit, right? I'm sure it took people a while to figure it out. This is a high quality fragrance. I'm liking it more and more as I wear it. Performance is really solid. The rating is going down in Fragrantica, but don't be surprised if a year from now, people might like it a little bit more. But yeah, right now it's just kind of a mild coffee fragrance, but we'll see. Fragrance number 2, this is Bond number 9's Bleeker Street. Bleeker Street is quite a popular fragrance in the Bond number 9 catalog for men. Men tend to really enjoy this. It is definitely much more masculine in the open. As it dries down, it gets lighter, more unisex, but the open is quite masculine here. And David Appel, who also did Black Orchid, so he's not just off the turnip truck. When he designed his fragrance, he wanted something that was both fresh and clean, and a little bit subtly sweet. So the sweetness here, kind of like the first fragrance, is very subtle and very quiet. It's not gourmandy in the slightest. Now, in this particular case, he got the sweetness from a blueberry note, which is not a very common note, so it's a little bit outside there. But he got freshness from a couple of different sources. One of them was from the violet leaf. Violet leaf is very fresh and very airy. But then he got some of that freshness from the aromatic notes in this, which is not normal. So he used oak moss and thyme and black currant leaf. Now, black currant leaf smells a little bit like ammonia. Now, ammonia is like super fresh, right? So you've got that black currant leaf freshness along with the violet leaf that give it a fresh element. Now, unfortunately, some people see that ammonia note and they think that this has a cat pee accord. It's not cat pee, but it is kind of fresh still, right? So let's just leave it at that. Fragrance number 3, this is Gucci Guilty Absolute. And if you know anything about the Gucci Guilty line, you'll know it's pretty boring and pretty conventional. What is this doing on this? Well, in 2015, Gucci hired Alessandro Michel, a fashion designer, to be the creative director of their house. And by 2017, he'd worked his way into the fragrance section. He took one look at the Gucci Guilty line and he said, enough. And then he hired Alberto Marias and challenged him to make something outside the box. Now, Alberto Marias is a crowd-pleasing guy, but he took this challenge very seriously, and so you ended up with something that's nothing like the rest of the line. You ended up with a boundary-pushing fragrance, an innovative fragrance. This has a lot of leather. It also has a lot of woods. But the key to this fragrance is the cypress note that I keep mentioning. But what I haven't mentioned before is that it's not a normal cypress note. Normally they use European cypress wood. For this particular fragrance, they went all the way to Alaska to get Nootka. That's a type of cypress tree that is very robust and very fresh. So you've got the heavy, fresh cypress note here, and it really explodes throughout the fragrance, lightening up the leather and the woods. It's a work of art, this fragrance, and the performance is excellent too. It's just not what's going on right now, but it's great. Fragrance number 4, this is Prada Amber Pour Homme Intense, and like Hermes, which does their own thing in a very minimalist way, Prada does their own thing in a very clean and professional way, and so not really designed to be, in a gourmandy style. That's why there haven't been a lot of Prada releases lately. This fragrance was tough, though, because the original Prada Amber Pour Homme was iconic, and it was a tough one to follow. They wanted something darker and more intense, and they did that through the use of 2 notes mainly. Patchouli, which is a notoriously dark note, but also a lot of myrrh. So this has an amber note, like the original, but it also tries to create a second amber note on the side. Normally, when you're creating amber, you use benzoin, you use vanilla, and labdanum. Now, in this case, you've got the amber note, and they have labdanum, vanilla, and myrrh. And myrrh is darker and richer than benzoin. And so the myrrh plays a big role in darkening the fragrance and making it more intense, along with the patchouli. And so, yeah, it's quite a different fragrance. They also toned down the saffron quite a bit, so it's not quite as fresh. Honestly, though, I think this is so much better than the original Amber Pour Homme. I love this fragrance. Unfortunately, they didn't advertise it much, and so it's not quite as popular as the original, and it is hard to get. It's been discontinued, unfortunately. But yeah, I love it. I love the Art Deco bottle, too. It's really classy. Fragrance number 5, this is H24 Herbe Vive from Hermes. What a shocker, another Hermes fragrance. Now, this one hasn't been very popular, but let me explain why. So first of all, they give you a visualization for what this is meant to smell like. It's meant to smell like a garden after a rainstorm. What they don't explain to you is what this does really well. You get rainstorms in the summer, right? Really, really hot out. You get the cooling effect of the rain. This is an incredibly cooling fragrance. It is more cooling than anything else in my collection except for Xerjoff's Neo, and that is really high praise. Now, this has not been super successful. Green fragrances are kind of like a specific niche in terms of popularity, but if you live in a hot climate, this is fantastic because it has an aroma chemical here called Fizz Cool. And what it's meant to do is activate a skin sensor, a nerve ending in the skin called TRPM8, which is what you get when it's cold. And so you get the psychosomatic feeling of it being very cooling. And it works. On a really, really hot day, that's when you're going to get the most about this. And that's generally when you're going to get the most from a green fragrance. So it's got a lot of green notes. It's got a little hint of fruity sweetness with the pear in the mid, but it's mostly a green fragrance and is specifically designed for really, really hot weather, and that's when it'll work the best. Fragrance number 6 is John Varvatos Vintage. It's a fragrance that people often refer to as a tobacco fragrance, although this is much more complex than that, and I would argue that tobacco is probably the 4th most important element of this fragrance. It's there, but other things are much more evident. Mainly aromatic notes. There's 7 aromatic/green notes in this, and that's why it comes off as kind of more mature, because aromatic notes are seen as more mature. It also has a fresh spicy component that you get from balsam fir. It has quite a bit of that, so it's quite fresh. And it also has a sweet component that comes from the quince and the rhubarb, both of which give it a fruity feel. So for me, for my money, tobacco is 4th there. It's aromatic, fresh, spicy, and a little fruity and sweet. Also has the tobacco, and yeah, it's a complex fragrance for something that's quite inexpensive. Big problem here is performance. 3.5, maybe 4 hours if you're really pushing it, but generally the performance isn't great, but the scent is great. Fragrance number 7, this is Fragrance World's Alpha, and this is all that I was able to salvage when I dropped my bottle, which was a terrible, terrible day. This is all I have left, the atomizer. Beautiful bottle, but I did grab a little bit so I can continue to test it, and I love it. It's a clone of Ebene Fume, and it's a really good, solid clone. I totally recommend a purchase of it, especially if you like woody, ambery fragrances, little bit of smokiness. So it's got an incense note. It's also got guaiac wood. So that's where you get the smokiness. But to categorize it as a smoky fragrance would be doing it a disservice. The ambery quality here is quite distinct. There's a lot of resins in this. There's also a little bit of black pepper that gives it a fresh ambery feel. And then there's a lot of woods in this. Very woody fragrance. You're going to get guaiac wood. You're going to get ebony wood and Palo Santo. Excellent performance. Because it's woody, projection is moderate, 2 to 3 feet, but really long-lasting, very high-quality clone, and yeah, that wasn't a good day. Finally, we have Azzaro Visit. This is a fragrance that's very, very similar to Gucci Rush, kind of a legendary fragrance, and I would not recommend buying this because it's a fairly average fragrance in terms of performance and quality, low price. But if you like woody, spicy fragrances, or if you like the original Gucci Rush, this is definitely worth a purchase. And I happen to like woody, spicy, and this is very, very nice. So there is a lot of cedar, there's guaiac wood, and there's a little bit of incense in here. So slightly smoky again. So I guess I kind of do like that feel. But a lot of woods. Aside from the guaiac wood, you're also going to get cedar. There's going to be a lot of spices. You're going to get cardamom, pink pepper in this as well. So just think woody, spicy, and you'll be fine. Performance, as I said, is kind of average. Scent quality is okay. Very inexpensive, but yeah, a little bit under the radar, but I really like it. So anyway, while I do like sweet fragrances to a certain extent, I do think there are too many of them on the market at the moment. They're only making subtle changes in all of the flankers. I would like to see, a little bit more experiment going in different directions, although I do like sweet oriental fragrances. There are just too many of them. So I just thought I'd go over some woody fragrances today, some fresher fragrances, things that are a little bit different outside the box. Hopefully you enjoyed this fragrance. Hopefully you enjoyed the channel. Appreciate your time. Thanks for watching.